You, sir, are muted.
Thank you. Good morning. You're watching DeProgram with Ted Rall and Jamarl Thomas. It is Tuesday, June 16th, 2026. Jamarl has a medical appointment that he can't miss, so he is being filled in or substituted for or replaced temporarily by producer Robbie West. Jamarl, I assume, will be back tomorrow morning, as expected, at 9 a.m. Also, Q&A show tomorrow at 12 noon. Also with JT at 9 a.m. Thanks for joining and following and watching and sharing the show. Your support means a lot, whether it's financial or otherwise. For financial support, you can subscribe, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later on in the show. You can also put in a Rumble rant or a YouTube super chat, and we will, of course, benefit from that enormously, and that's what helps keeps the show going. What else do we have to talk about? Okay, so today our main topic is going to be what's going on in New York State and why it's important. Governor Hochul, the corporatist Democrat governor of the state, has basically declared war against your right to protest as protected by the First Amendment. We'll be getting into that. Gavin Newsom, 2028 presidential hopeful, says, and this appears to be true, that he's being targeted for investigation by Trump's Justice Department, he and his wife and former employees. So we'll get into the political ramifications there. Last and definitely not least, the ongoing situation in the Middle East. There's supposed to be a peace deal signed in Geneva by the U.S. and Iran that's going to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened, lead to the release of billions of dollars in sanctioned funds that belong to Iran. The Iranians will be able to get it back finally. And that's all good news, and obviously it means a stop to the fighting. Netanyahu, as we talked about extensively yesterday on both shows, is planning to try to scuttle this deal. He made a public statement saying, it's almost like a Ted Rall quote, "We have our own interests." That's true, and the Israelis think that their interest is to continue invading Lebanon and bombing Beirut. So, the Iranians say that would be a violation of the agreement that the United States is signing. So there's the whole complicated question as to what extent Israel can be controlled by the United States under an agreement that they're not a signatory to. Okay. Jamarl says he will be back tomorrow. I just saw his text, so that's awesome. And TMI show coming up at 10 a.m. All right, so I think that's basically it for the housekeeping efforts, if I'm not mistaken, Robbie.
No, there's just one last thing. I decided to. I was wearing a white T-shirt, and before the show started, and I got a couple of messages saying, "Robbie, could you kind of step it up to dress a little bit better like what JT does?" So This is me answering your request, and I chose this shirt specifically for Mark Levin. Because now that little troll has decided to once again become never Trump. So Mark,
you can't compare him with the wisdom of Yoda.
No, it's just this is not Yoda. This is that little walking baby Yoda from the Mandalorian, who's just a very squeaky, annoying creature that really should be ate by something much larger, like my cat was.
Although I did hear that Yoda was the way he talks, is modeled on Eastern European Jewish linguistic construction. So it's like, happy I am, as opposed to I am happy or whatever, is sort of like meant to do that. There's a lot of stuff like that, right? Like in sci-fi.
It's shittish.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just like Spock, his old thing like this.
Yeah, that's a Jewish thing.
Right? Yeah, it's from the Kabbalah.
Right. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that in sci-fi because there's a lot of Jewish sci-fi writers. Okay, so let's talk about Kathy Hochul. And so this time, because Robbie is not doing he's got a co-host as well as do this. I'm going to help him sort through the comments, and I will apologize in advance for my own incompetence at this. But let's get to the Rumble rants right now, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, F you so. Now that idiocracy has officially arrived, and I would agree that anyone who doubts that just had to look the uh, at the big confab. Was it Saturday or yeah, it was Saturday, right?
Yep.
At the White House, would have to agree with that. Um, what's next for dumbed down America? When the fertilizer runs out, do we switch to Brondo? It does have electrolytes, and electrolytes are what plants crave.
Yep.
Um, I, you know, it's there's never Russians always say that no matter how bad anything is, it can always get worse, and that one of the mistakes that Americans who are perennial optimists make is to think, "Oh, it's got to get better." It's like, no, you could be at Dachau and then transferred to Auschwitz. That could happen.
Oh, yeah.
You could be at Auschwitz and your commander could be sent to the Eastern Front, and the next one could be even more sadistic and evil. Everything can get worse. This country, I mean, the interpretations of that. Let's talk a little bit about the UFC fight and all of the other sort of trashy developments at the White House.
Yeah.
I do think, I saw a post from your favorite person and the Merry Widow, Erica Kirk,
Oh,
this morning. And, you know me, I'm fair. When someone's right, they're right. Whether I think that, I generally think she defines the word skank. But that said, she said, "Oh, under Democrats, the White House seemed like an elitist place culturally. This was something that feels more like ordinary Americans could get into." And I thought about like Obama and to a lesser extent Biden, although Biden didn't host as many cultural events at the White House. But Obama had a lot of sort of JFK style, highfalutin, high art, musical events at the White House that I remember just reading about and thinking, these sound really great. Why aren't they televised, and why aren't ordinary Americans allowed to participate in these? It's basically like you've turned the White House into your own exclusive late 1970s, early 1980s New York nightclub that had with a velvet rope and nobody else can get in. I thought Erica Kirk was right about that. But as with all things American, Robbie, we seem to have gone from one extreme to another. And now the other extreme is, turning the White House into basically a WWE NASCAR fest. Doesn't seem like really the right counterpoint. Small d democratizing culture and the White House would have seemed like the proper response to it.
No, I think what they should do, honestly, is just establish a lounge with topless dancers, maybe an open bar. If that's what you're going to do, if you're going to make it a hub of entertainment, you could do it. And it is a relatively nice looking house. It's got that famous porch. They've got a lot of stuff going on. They got the ballroom that's under construction.
Yeah.
So listen, there's lots of things that you could do with the White House. You have to let them into the living quarters. You could just find a place, maybe around where Thomas Jefferson used to have his pet bear, and you could 100% just have yourself like pole dancers and all kinds of things.
You mean Theodore Roosevelt?
No, Thomas Jefferson had a pet bear. It was a gift from Lewis and Clark.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it a full-grown bear?
I don't know what kind of a bear it was. None of the reports that I've read said. If I had to hazard a guess, it's probably a black bear because they're less mean. But no, Thomas Jefferson had a pet bear that lived at the White House.
That's bizarre and kind of cool.
But you got to remember, because Lewis and Clark had just happened. They were American heroes. And they doubled the size of the country.
By the way, speaking of which, maybe as a student of history, you can elucidate this for me. So did you hear about there's a lawsuit right now. Trump wants to build a statuary garden with 250 American heroes. It's I heard it described as eclectic, and that's totally spot on. A very eclectic, like grab bag of, some people you're like, okay, I can see this. I think Alexander Graham Bell is in there. Thomas Edison certainly is. John Wayne is in there. Ronald Reagan. I'm like, what? But because to me, hero has a very particular, meaning. Icon is not the same thing as a hero. But anyway, the point is, they had Meriwether Clark. It was Meriwether Lewis was in the statuary garden, but not Clark. I'm like, why?
You got to have both. I mean, it doesn't work without both. And if you have Sacagawea there, you've definitely got to have her. You got to have her husband and Lewis and Clark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seriously, and that's not me being flippant. I mean, it's a package deal. You kind of got to have all four of them. And Manchild says, now that I have been convinced to not wear white shirts, it's now time for me to learn how to fold my laundry. That is my wife's job. For me, that is a bridge too far. Listen, I will wear a more appropriate shirt besides my white shirt that is maybe looking whiter than I normally am. But listen, if you want me to fold my laundry, that's just a bridge too far.
Do you insist that your wife fold your laundry with the Gap shirt fold?
I don't really care how she does it.
Just fold it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And really, the only time I wear folded stuff is if I go to church. I mean,
I had a roommate who basically kept all of his laundry in the convenient ball format. He basically would take it out of the dryer and throw it, even like the sheets, just as a giant crumpled ball. It drove me crazy. Of course, I don't really understand why, because really, who fucking cares? I mean, but it takes up more room that way. But I don't know. Okay.
Well, Ted, you know me. I mean, what you see is what you get.
So thanks for another $2, so $4 total. Thank you. Robbie, would you be down for taxing billionaires if it all went to pay the national debt, being that they mostly are the cause of it?
I don't know how they're the cause of it. And let me elaborate on this.
Mm-hmm.
Congress, specifically the House of Representatives, is the one that comes up with spending packages. Billionaires, as a rule, don't serve in Congress. So Congress is the one that's responsible for it. What we should do is confiscate the salaries of every single congressman that voted for this, every senator that voted for it, and every president that signed these spending billion dollars into law. I think that would be fair. I don't really see how stealing from somebody else that didn't vote for something fixes the problem. I understand the spirit of what it is that you're saying. Let's just be honest here. They didn't vote for it.
Well, why don't we take out the the stipulation that like they caused it? Because look, as the resident socialist here, I have no sympathy for rich people. But that said, I don't really know how billionaires cause the national debt. They have the money, right? I mean, that would seem like a good reason to do it. I mean, if although the deficit is so big that even if we took all of Elon Musk's $1 trillion, you'd still be shy $39 trillion on the deficit. So I don't know. Would you be in favor of a one-time massive tax on the rich in order to pay down the debt?
No, because we tried that before with the income tax. The income tax was originally only supposed to affect rich people, and now look at it. I mean, that's the problem with it. What starts off with a good intention, never stays that way.
Governments get addicted to the spending.
Yeah,
I remember thinking about that in the New York area, and I imagine that other states do it the same way. When a bridge initially was built and they established a toll, as soon as the bridge was paid off, the toll went away. The Connecticut Turnpike was like that. Once the Connecticut Turnpike's construction was fully financed by the road tolls, they got rid of them and they're gone. But there's now they don't do that anymore. Now they build something new. They establish the toll, and that toll is going to be there for the rest of our lives for sure.
Sure, but I mean, tell me, that when the 19th Amendment was passed, the progressive income tax was supposed to only affect the rich. That's the problem, is that it never stays that way. It never stays that way.
If you so clarified with another $2, billionaires own Congress.
That's true, but they still don't vote. I mean, I guess you could say they get someone to vote for them on their behalf, but still, they're not the ones that are actually casting the vote. And ultimately, the people are the ones who elect these clowns to go in. A good litmus test, if someone's going to run for Congress or dog catcher or whatever else in the district is that you live in, then look to see who's funding them. If you see it's AIPAC or someone with the name of Steen at the end or some super PAC, don't vote for them. Vote for the dark horse that's running against them.
The thing is, Robbie, I'm going to say something you don't like. I mean, what positive? Okay, it's not even saying; it's asking a question, sure. And we'll get into the New York story. what benefit would there be if, let's say, over somehow, I apologize here, allergies are
No,
killing me.
no dying on the air, Ted. No, because
Oh, that's
that
good.
that would it'd be a one-time thing. Cartoonist dies on air, but then the story's over, and
True.
and
It's
Scott
better.
Stannis.
You're
I
like that.
don't know. I don't know if I get Scott Stannis filling for you all the time.
No, he's not good for that anymore. Bastard thinks that he can like have his own life. Well, I don't know what the fuck that's all about. Okay, so let's say we did pay off the national debt.
Mhm.
What do you think? I mean, obviously, yeah, we would benefit from the fact that we would no longer be, the national budget would benefit. We would no
Yep.
longer be paying off the interest on that debt. That's a lot of money. But as a citizen, Robbie, how do you think you, me, all the people watching right now, how do you think they would benefit? I mean, I don't think they would. I don't think anything would happen. I mean, I think like it's not like we didn't get a peace dividend after the end of the Cold War, right? We were told like, oh, we're not going to have to spend money on the military anymore. We're going to be able to devote more money for the American people. We didn't do that. So, what makes you think that if we paid off the national debt, it would help us?
Well, on paper, what would happen is that you'd be able to lower taxes because you're not servicing such a huge amount of debt.
Theoretically, sure.
So, I mean, to your point, what government's actually going to ever do that? Second thing is really we got to get back to sound money. We've got to get away from this idea that money has value because we believe it does, and have a currency like we used to have linked to commodities. Because right now, the biggest problem we have with the dollar is that no one knows what it's actually worth. It's backed up by the threat of force from the United States military. It's a lead based standard, and that's not a good way to run a railroad.
Well, that's not that different from the way paper money in the semi-modern era was first introduced, right? I mean, it was Genghis Khan who ruled over this vast empire and decided that it was impractical to lug around giant bags full of coinage. So they decided like to introduce paper money because it was more portable. And people, when they first started receiving it as payment in occupied Mongol territory, they're like, what their first response was, "What the fuck is this? I'm not taking this." And then the great Khan's troops pointed out that if they didn't take it, they would be killed. And they decided suddenly paper money became worth something, right? So
Yeah,
it's not. This is
but
how it's
100
always been, right?
that's true. But 150 years later, his great great grandson printed so much it destroyed the entire economy, and the empire split into five different khanates. So there is
Well, it was the
there is
empire
a
was
cycle
also
here, right?
because he had so many kids and grandkids, right?
Well, sure, but the problem is that he was a drunk and he decided, I can just fire up the printing press and have as much money as I want. That's what led to the rebellion of the Red Scarves. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Lee knows about that more than I do. I mean, the dude Chinese. That's what happened. I mean, that's why Mongolia is no longer in charge of Eurasia.
Yeah, no, but I think it's also seriously the empire was going to be divided no matter what, right? Um, so, all right, John D. Cockefeller, thanks for the $2. I love this country, but I truly believe that at this point we need the petrodollar to collapse, and the subsequent financial collapse will continue to spend like there's no tomorrow otherwise.
I agree.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I just don't know. I don't know that out of control spending is the issue. I think it's the out of control spending on the military that's the issue. I mean, imagine if we were doing the same amount of budgetary spending, which is basically the subject of my book, right? My book, What's Left, reallocates the federal budget as it currently stands. It doesn't try to.
Speaking of that, I'm reading it again.
Oh, cool. And it does not try to say, oh, let's cut the federal budget. It's like, let's just keep it as it is, but reallocate. And, I mean, I think we would still be exactly, we would still have this debt service on bonds and notes and all that. But we would have a far healthier, happier American worker. And that's got to help. I mean,
Well, of course it does, because then you're getting something back. Because a happy and healthy worker is more productive than one who's sick and doing a job that he's underpaid for.
yeah.
So, by definition, that's correct, and
So,
But I mean, but you're getting something back out of it. Right now, though, we don't. I mean, we are looting the entire country for the sake of an empire, and we just got beat by Iran.
Yeah, we did, like a drum. And we're gonna. Well, we can just talk about that now. Why don't we? That's a nice segue. Okay, so the 2026 Iran war peace agreement is due to be signed this coming Friday in Geneva, Switzerland. The Iran, this was unclear as of yesterday. We knew that the Iranians wanted the ceasefire to apply to Lebanon and Hezbollah as well, but there had been no word on Iran's position on whether Israeli troops should be allowed to remain in southern Lebanon, and where they've established a buffer zone that seems to be kind of permanent if the Israelis have their view. Yesterday, I said I couldn't understand why the Iranians would be okay with that. To me, it's like if you're going for the ceasefire, you're covering Hezbollah, then the Israelis need to be gone. Well, apparently that is where the Iranians are. Iran's foreign minister today said that all the Israeli forces who are south of the Litani River in Lebanon need to go back home. And meanwhile, Israeli officials, including Benjamin Netanyahu, say that their invaders want to stay in Lebanon as, quote, Trump's agreement does not bind us. We have our own interests. Now, strictly speaking, legally, that's totally true. Israel is not a party to the accord, but in reality, what that does is, I mean, basically, what that is telling the United States, what that's telling Donald Trump is, Mr. President, you now have a decision to make. Are you going? You basically have been funding us to the tune of billions of dollars and running interference for us in the international community, including at the United Nations. The question now is, are you going to punish the Israelis for being disobedient? Yay or nay? Jamarl doesn't think that he will. I think he will, because it's gone too far, and there's no political capital really. There's no real advantage to him in the aggregate to supporting Israel any longer. So I think Netanyahu will attack. He'll continue to attack Beirut. He'll continue to bomb in Lebanon and continue to commit genocide there, where over 4,000 Lebanese have already died just in the past few weeks. And then Trump will tell Netanyahu to fuck off. I don't know if it's a permanent fuck off to Israel, but certainly it's going to lead to a major chill in the relationship.
I think I'm on Team JT with this because, I think Trump is working off of two parts with this. One, his ego hates the fact that so many people like me and people on the right call him a slave to Israel, to the Israeli lobby, and that he takes his orders from Netanyahu. I've said on this show that, oh, look, the boss has arrived when Netanyahu goes to the White House. Trump's got to hate whenever people say that. The problem is that Congress reminds itself that it has power every time Israel is involved. Like, they sell their hands when it comes to war. They sell their hands when it comes to spending. They sell their hands when it comes to everything except this issue. Like, did you see what Ted Cruz tweeted out this morning?
No, I missed it.
He said there are dark forces trying to destroy the U.S.-Israel alliance, and we must not let that happen. We must stand with Israel.
Dark force.
I mean, no, listen, at the end of the day, Netanyahu doesn't need Trump. He needs Congress, the entirety of Congress, the House and the Senate, and he has it.
Brought that up because obviously this Ted Cruz tweet is a reflection of a story that Politico has this morning about the U.S. Senate. People like Lindsey Graham are saying that they need to go. They need to that the Senate should approve of any agreement between Iran and the U.S. I mean, now, it's so funny, right? Mm-hmm. Congress completely abdicates its war powers and its power, its ability to veto whether or not the United States goes to war. Yep. They let the 60-day deadline for the War Powers Act resolution to expire and go by without notice. But now that there's a danger of peace of a kind, then their Senate's freaking out. That's where they are. They're
That's my point.
terrified of peace.
That's my point. Is that Congress is more than happy to forget that it is a branch of the American government. They're willing to abdicate all their power, all their responsibility, everything to an imperial presidency until it comes to the issue of the state of Israel. In which case, they remind themselves, oh, wait, Trump can't sign a treaty. Per the Constitution, a treaty must be ratified by the Senate.
True.
And Trump is going over to Geneva, pretend like he's a king, to sign. Listen, all a treaty is an agreement. That's all it is. Congress, if they push on this thing, Ted Cruz is correct. The Senate must vote on this.
Well, that's what Ted Cruz thinks.
Well, that's what the Constitution sasays. I just wish I remember what it said when it comes to waging war or about levying taxes or about money.
It should cut both ways, right? This reminds me, you're too young to remember this, I think, but at some point, like in the mid 90s, there were reunification talks between North and South Korea. Mm-hmm. And to listen to the anger and fear from Congress that there was a terrible possibility of the Korean War officially coming to an end and these two parties making peace, you would have thought it was a crisis. They were terrified. It was like no, we can't allow this to happen.
Yeah. That's the point that I'm making here is that Trump, he's not going to stay. One way or the other, he's leaving office. The dude's 80 years old. His term ends in 2 years. The Democrats are going to take the House of Representatives, maybe the Senate, at the end of this year. It's a strong possibility of it. Trump needs to realize that it will be endless impeachments because lawfare is coming back.
Yeah, that's true.
And if he bucks the Israel lobby, mark my words, you're hearing it here first. If Trump truly tries to hold Netanyahu accountable, the Senate will vote to impeach, and what they will use as justification would be that he signed a treaty when he does not have the authority as the executive. That is a power of the legislature. Mark my words.
That happening. That's disgusting, but I could see that happening.
That's the point. Netanyahu does not need Trump. He has the Congress.
F you so. You're forgetting that Israel will soon be completely integrated and control the U.S. military. They already own our political class. So with respect, I'm going to push back on that. I mean, I know that there's this intel sharing agreement that the Israelis and the Americans have signed, and it is disturbing. I think that's the last gasp of the U.S.-Israeli alliance. I think it's on the way out. I think it's done for, and it might not be tomorrow, but it's going to happen now in a way that seems inevitable to me. And also, that agreement, just for the record, doesn't completely integrate the two militaries. It's not like they control each other or they're merged, but it just means that there would be coordination. Not in a policy point of view, but more like an intel point of view. I don't know. I think that I'm just going to say, to really cut to the chase, I don't think that agreement will ever manifest in actual changes between these two militaries. I don't think it'll ever happen. I could be naive. It wouldn't be the first time, but I don't think it's going to. I think it's done.
I'll tell you right now why they're trying to do it. Like how, you got Randy Fine, who introduced a bill to end the aid package to Israel. So all the trained SEALs will go in and clap, like, yay. But they don't read it. Mm-hmm. What it is all about is intertwining the U.S. and Israeli economy, so that way the aid doesn't go in the form of an aid package. It all has to do with transactional commerce. That's what.
So you think it's more about making the money more fungible between the two sides, rather.
Of course, instead of being a gift, it's just done in the form of a direct transaction. That's what this is. Listen,
I still don't think it's going to happen, though. Honestly, I think that you're going to see
who's going to stop it?
The Israel lobby, the Zionists in the Senate, all those people. Yeah, they're fucking freaking out because they can see what's coming. Look, that's another way of looking at it. Why are they freaking out this much? Because they know the relationship is on the ropes.
But it's not. I mean, here's the thing. The Democrats are going to win the House of Representatives this fall. There's a solid chance they're going to take the Senate too. Which of those Democrats that are running are actually going to be any different from the Republicans that they're replacing?
Oh, not at all. And we'll get into that.
I mean, the election. Listen, elections are an illusion. It gives you an illusion of choice where you think that what you say matters, that what you want makes a difference. It doesn't. It never changes. It's a system problem. Here in the United States, and then we'll go on after this, we can change the political party, but we can never change the system. And I bet you Lee in the chat will agree with me on this.
Oh, we can. It's just going to involve, breaking things.
Well, it will involve a war. Let's just assume that Americans are too drugged up right now to do that. In China, you can't change the party. It's the Communist Party, but you can change the system. China is no longer a communist nation. It's not what it was under Mao. It's not a communist nation that has the GDP of Indiana.
It's a capitalist country with
correct. They changed the system.
A lot of communist posters on the wall.
The Chinese changed the system, but they can't change the party. Of the two, China is at least more honest because you actually can get some change. Here in the United States, you don't get that. Instead, you get to go to jail for protesting.
Yeah, that's true and sad. Okay, let's see. We have a few more comments we need to get to before we move on to the next subject here. Okay, Manchild is asking, and thanks for the $2. How about RFK promoting controversial and experimental stem cell treatments for autism, but warning everyone about the dangers of vaccines and aspirin that have no direct correlation to autism whatsoever?
I oppose stem cells because they involve using the cells of aborted babies. I think stem cell research should be banned. Okay,
but setting that aside.
No, that's the answer. He shouldn't be promoting it. It should be banned. Anything that this is some straight stuff route from what Mandelov is doing. If you're able, the only reason he wasn't doing stem cells is because he didn't have the technology at the time. Otherwise, he would have been using aborted Jewish babies to experiment with, just like what we're doing now. Anything that requires the destruction of a human being to advance medical science, that needs to be a hard red line. It doesn't matter if you're religious or if you're atheist or if you believe, it doesn't matter.
So do you have a problem with the bodies of prisoners being harvested for their organs?
I mean, listen, if they sign a consent form for it and then they donate it.
Consent.
Huh?
Without their consent.
No, it's theft.
All right.
I always try to be consistent. No, with my principles.
But dead people don't own anything.
That's true, but you still own your body.
Not if you're dead.
Well, you asked me my opinion. I give it to you.
Yeah, or maybe you should. Maybe you should. Right.
That's the point of that's the point of a will, right? Is like after I'm gone, this is what I want to have happen with my effects and my body.
Right.
I guess it just depends on, do you own yourself or does the state own you? Because if the state owns you, you're not a citizen, you're a slave.
What should we do next? Should we do Newsom or Hochul?
Let's do Hochul. That's more interesting.
Okay, well, I mean, we'll do them both, but okay. So here's what's going on with Kathy Hochul here in New York. So Kathy Hochul, for people who aren't familiar, so back in the last decade, Andrew Cuomo was the Democratic governor of New York. He resigned due to his butt grabbery, and then his lieutenant governor, with whom he had balanced the ticket, but was to his right, was from upstate New York, from Buffalo. She's a classic corporate Hillary Clinton Democrat. Became, of course, governor, and then ran for election and was elected in her own stead and is currently serving that term. She seems to be declaring some sort of war against all protesters in New York State. In a very liberal state, not upstate's not as liberal, of course, but it's still overall a liberal state because of New York City and its surrounding suburbs. And Anyway, she's created buffer zones. That means that you're not allowed to demonstrate around a house of worship. And we can talk about why she did that. Also, last year, she prohibited protesters from wearing masks. Let's not forget, this is the same governor who, under COVID, was requiring us all to wear masks. So it's like Simon says wear a mask, Simon says don't wear masks. And now activists, so in other words, what she's basically saying is you have to be transparent to the cops, like to make it easy for them to use facial recognition software in order to arrest you, right?
That's not my job.
And
It's
then
not my job to make their job easier.
yeah, and I fail to see how wearing like say a balaclava when it's like 10 degrees below zero, which it can be in New York, it should be like punishable by law. And also, there's every now and then there's a sit-in by various protesters for various causes in the state capitol up in Albany, and they usually they're rounded up peacefully and they're issued a desk appearance ticket for disorderly conduct. Typically, those charges are dismissed, but anyway, they don't go on your permanent record. It's more like you pay $100 and you're on your way. She's replaced that. She says she has nothing to do with it. That it's New York State Police independently decided to do this. I mean, come on, she's the governor. The state police doesn't say boo if the governor doesn't approve. Anyway, now they're getting hit by misdemeanors, which means that when you're invited to participate in a protest, you're taking the chance that if you participate in a peaceful sit-in that harms nobody, that you could end up with a police record that ends up following you the rest of your life, and you're going to have to tell all prospective employers who want to know about your misdemeanor arrests as well as your felonies that you're a criminal, right?
Yeah.
So, I think this is obviously it's interesting to me because this isn't Texas. It's not a conservative state. It's not Ron DeSantis. This is the governor of New York. This is a liberal state. She's a Democrat. She represents a Democratic constituency. I guess the point is, if you can get away with this level of government oppression and violating our First Amendment rights in a state like New York, you can pretty much do it anywhere in the country.
Yeah, you can. And I was doing some research on this. And the very first instance where a law like this was enforced, you'll never guess where it was.
Okay.
It was, if I want to remember right, it was at a abortion clinic in Tennessee. A bunch of Christians, they sat in the clinic. They weren't heard anything. They were sitting in the clinic and they were praying. They were rounded up. They were arrested. They were charged. They were actually charged. Like what you're talking about right now. And that's the model for where this stuff is coming from. And back when that happened, you had a lot of your pro-choice lefties who were just cheering. It's like, yay. And I remember thinking that whenever this happened, that one day this is going to come back. This is going to bite you too. And here we are.
Supreme Court too. The issue that you're talking about too, right? Didn't the Supreme Court codify at one point that pro-life protesters, demonstrators had to be, I think, 100 feet or 100 meters. I want to say 100 meters away from the entrance to an abortion clinic.
Yeah.
And I think that may have been struck down by the conservative court. But I mean, I did find that disturbing. I mean, look at the political conventions where if you want to protest, they pen you in literally behind wrought iron, behind a chain link fence, typically in some very undesirable, gross place like under a freeway. Typically miles away from the site of the convention, so that you'll be no one from a TV network, much less a delegate to that Democratic or Republican National Convention, will ever lay eyes on you. I mean, free speech, it's kind of like, well, you have the right to protest. But if you're protesting non-contextually, 100 miles away from the place that you're protesting, I mean, it's like the protest never happened at all. I mean, hell, we can put everyone in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa and say that's America's protest zone and be done with it. But I know the answer to this. Americans don't really care, do they?
No, they don't. And I was right. I couldn't remember where in Tennessee it was. It was Mount Juliet, Tennessee, where pro-life protesters were arrested for blocking access to the Carafum Health Center clinic at Providence Medical Pavilion. They were charged under the FACE Act after a March 5th, 2021 blockade at the clinic.
I mean, the thing is, I'm highly sympathetic to the stressed out condition of a woman who's seeking an abortion, and she doesn't want to see pictures of aborted fetuses as she walks in and stuff. But as disturbing and unsettling as that is, as long as the clinic is allowed to remain open and it's not being impeded in that way, I don't see a legal issue. I mean, I think as long as you can get by and you go in, come and go, and do your business, and no one lays a hand on you, you're not really entitled as an American citizen to tell people that they can't avail themselves of their freedom of expression just because you think it's disturbing or icky or inconvenient to you.
Yeah, well, in this case, they weren't even holding up pictures. They were literally sitting in the lobby and in the hallways praying. Like they weren't holding up pictures. They weren't being loud. It was a sit-in. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
it was a sit-in with prayer, is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like we were talking about, there at the Capitol there in New York. I don't know if they're praying or not, but it was a sit-in.
And certainly,
It's the same thing.
It's trespassing. Abortion clinics are private property. Certainly the managers can call up the local police and have the people removed, right? And that's totally fine.
100%.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there, but the fact that they were charged, to your point, and then the people on the left are just coming. Oh, look, we own the right. We own those Christians. Well, how's that shoe feel on the other foot now?
Well, that's the thing is I'm pro-choice, and I find that story disturbing. And you're right. If you talk, the thing is, the best way to defend your own side's free speech rights are to defend the other side's free speech rights.
There's no way that you can. You have to defend your opponent's free speech rights. Otherwise, no one has it.
But nobody does it. That's the problem.
I agree. And it sucks. People need to wake the hell up.
Yeah. No, totally couldn't agree more. All right. Do we have any more? I'm going to see if we have an ad. No ad. Okay. I never can figure out why we get ads, and I don't know what the metrics are.
Right now, Rumble's budget is they've cut their budget back. That's one of the reasons why the creator program paid out less last month.
Oh, it's just because they be broke?
Yeah, they be broke. They need more people watching.
Okay. All right. Go watch Rumble. All right. And for people who watch us, who hate Rumble and keep us streaming on Rumble while watching and commenting on YouTube, God bless you. We really,
for sure.
We really appreciate you. Okay. So, I guess we should. Are we done with that? I mean, I think the Kathy Hochul story is its own thing. But as far as I look at, liberals, the left, progressives, we should be free speech absolutists at all times. There's no excuse for censorship. And part of woke ideology has been censoring the right. It doesn't work. I mean, all it does is strengthen them, and vice versa, right? So there's just no point. Speaking of strengthening your opponent, let's go and talk about what's going on with Gavin Newsom. So Gavin Newsom, of course, is considering running for president in 2028. He's been very open about that, hasn't been cagey at all. I think it's certainly likelier than not that he will. He announced yesterday that he and his wife are under investigation by Trump's newly highly weaponized Justice Department. The governor of California says that federal agents have been going around to his family members, his friends, former employees. They've been demanding records. They're digging through his financial and other documents. They've been going after his wife, and he's accusing the Department of Justice of abusing the grand jury process. The thing is, it doesn't look, as far as we know so far, that the DOJ has uncovered anything interesting about Newsom. This all seems to be related to stuff that really seemed that the governor didn't seem to have much to do with. Full disclosure, I personally hate Newsom, and I do think that he's corrupt in other respects. But that's not what they're investigating him for. And we can talk about my other respects if we want. But this to me seems like a really great way by Trump to strengthen Newsom's candidacy. I mean, Newsom is one of those candidates like Hillary Clinton that Democrats are being told basically, swallow and take your medicine. You're going to have to deal with this corporatist centrist Democrat who basically his claim to fame are his chiclet teeth, as Manila would say, his bouffant hairdo, central casting, looks. And, we have to ignore the fact that he's the governor of a state that is, to be charitable, not doing well, and not a state whose governance we really want to emulate nationally. And, people were not, I don't think many Democrats are excited about Gavin Newsom. About the most thrilling thing about him is the fact that he does these mean tweets about Trump in Trump's style, which has basically become one joke told over and over again. In other words, it's like SNL. So, but now, if he's a warrior, if he has lawfare being declared against him by the federal government, that makes him far more appealing to mainstream liberal Democrats than he was before. I mean, part of me wonders, is Trump trying to make Newsom the Democratic nominee for president because he thinks he'll be easier to beat?
He'll be easier to beat. All you got to do is just look at California. What's the want to emulate? Is it the homelessness? Is it the drug use? Is it the many hours longs waiting in emergency rooms because they're packed with just people who shouldn't be there in the first place? I mean, it's the education system is a complete disaster. I mean, seriously, if you were going to run against someone, that someone you wanted to be Gavin Newsom, because all you've got to do, you can have an ad that's about 5 seconds long and say, do you want to live in California? That's it.
Yeah, I mean,
the answer is no.
And the thing is, California, so it's funny, right? Like I've said this before. Well, the first time I visited Little Rock, Arkansas was like after Bill Clinton had left office. I remember in my first reaction walking around what was undeniably a really shitty third world looking city was like, man, if the national press had ever come to Little Rock, Bill Clinton would have never been president. But, they didn't want to go to Little Rock because, no one's going to their editor and saying, hey, boss, please send me there. They want to go to Davos.
Right.
It's nice there. So they didn't go. And, I think, but California is different. I mean, a lot of people visit California. And if you didn't go personally, someone who has been there. And so, anyone who's been to any major city like LA or San Fran, they see it. And they, I could tell stories. I mean, we all can. And it's like, you can't keep California hidden. I mean, you can show the tent cities, you can show the, the crack addicts, you can show the, nude people walking down the street. I mean, it's the lawlessness, the dysfunction, the filth is out of control. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's an extremely weak candidate. I think he would be pretty easy to defeat. Also, don't forget, do you remember that debate that he held with Ron DeSantis a few years back? And everyone thought he was going to clean up the floor with Ron DeSantis, who is about as appealing as the alligators that he uses as his logo. Yeah. DeSantis beat him. I really was surprised. I thought Newsom would have held his own at least. He didn't. I mean, DeSantis owned him. And I mean, if that's
watch it.
If that's how well he campaigns and debates, I mean, he's fucked.
Well, seriously, all he can run on is woke open arms ideology. We love everybody. We'll get some more rainbow flags. He'll be fine. He'll be okay. And I can't do the gravelly voice that he has. So just I struggle with that, unfortunately. And someone in the chat before asked if Robbie is an authoritarian. In the case of California, if I was made king for a day, I 100% would be. I would use the power of the state to fix that state. I would round up the homeless people. I would round up the drug addicts. I would get them the help that they needed. and I have no problem at all putting a bullet in the head of every single drug dealer in the state.
Yeah.
I would clean that state up because you would need a strong man to do it.
Let's do some comments here with 8 minutes left. FUSO, thanks for the $1. FUSO says, I'm against human experimentation as well as dogs like those poor beagles, especially since I'm an autistic Peanuts fan. Yeah, the beagles. Did you see the picture of the beagles?
I mean, it was so bad. It was so bad. And now one thing about stem cells, I'm not opposed to stem cells per se. Like, for example, you can get stem cells out of cord blood from umbilical cords and from the placenta. I have no problem with that. I have the problem with harvesting the cells of unborn murdered children.
Yeah.
For me, that's the line. I mean, if you're,
I could look. I honestly respect that. I see that. I mean, it's a very valid point of view. Okay, so yeah, and I gotta just say, when I saw the picture of the beagles, I was like, I'm not a dog person,
sick.
but I was like, oh, I would take one of those. I'd make Clovis get along with him. He's so cute. I love beagles. Anyway, Scott Cove 683, thank you for the $5. No national debt, just bonds. The Fed doesn't borrow to spend, funded by fiat via the power of the purse. Kelton shows MMT could abolish it with a pen. What's MMT? I don't know. All right.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, in the comments, if a lot of people sometimes use acronyms, and I'm like struggling to figure out what they mean sometimes. FUSO, thanks for the $1. Scratch a liberal and you'll find a fascist. Yeah, Malcolm X warned us about the libs. That's true. Liberals are not, they're not liberal. It's the problem.
No.
I wish they were. They'd be great.
My food, Ted wants to know if you've tested me for extra chromosomes. I think I'm actually short on chromosomes. I don't think I have one too many.
Now, we don't do DNA testing to figure out who can work on the show here. Because, that could come around to bite me in the ass, and we don't need that. So, yeah, I mean, look, I do think that this is this is such a gift and Newsom's making the most of it, right? He's going to become a martyr.
I would.
Yeah.
Listen, Trump is really good about being a self-licking ice cream cone. But in this case, though, I think it was actually strategic. Because who is it that you want? Who is it that you want Marco Rubio or JD Vance to go up against in 2028? There's no better person. There's no better gift than Gavin Newsom.
Look, I got to say though, you just take, and sometimes you do have to take news at face value. And the fact is, it's disgusting to use the federal government to go after a very likely presidential candidate from the opposing party. I mean, that's some serious shithole country stuff. That's seriously third world shit. That's not the way a functioning democracy works, unless you have Newsom dead to rights. By the way, I don't know. Should I ask? Someone asked, me to remind everyone what's the dish I have against Newsom. Should I explain that quickly or not?
Yeah, go ahead. And John D. Rockefeller, because this is his field, he says, I understand the knee-jerk reaction, but you truly do not have modern medicine without animal models. You can do it humanely, though. Like, you don't have to torture them.
Okay, so very quickly, as everyone here knows, I sued the LA Times for libel. Okay, so it was a roller coaster. It went through the courts. I lost. I won. Then, as we went through the appeals process, I lost. Then I won again, and I was at the winning stage when COVID started in February 2020. And at that time, we were notified that the courts were shutting down. However, right before the courts shut down, and they said, we'll get back to you on your case and everyone else's cases. They send your lawyer an email to let you know what's going on. There's also a portal that you could log into and find out the status of your case. The California Supreme Court issued a preliminary ruling overwhelmingly in my favor. They said like 99.9% of the time, the final ruling is word for word identical, and certainly with the same results as the preliminary ruling. So we were like, okay, we've won. We're good, right? So the courts close. On April 1st, while the courts are closed, the California Supreme Court comes back and on the same day, April Fool's Day 2020, reverses their ruling, no comment after issuing like a 50 plus page opinion in my case in my favor. They literally reverse themselves in what is called a decertified decision, which means, like Bush v. Gore, it can't be used as precedent. It only applies to Ted Rall. They, on the same day, they reverse and dismiss charges against the LA Times in at least two other cases, both of those involving age discrimination. Mine was libel. So in other words, the LA Times owner, Dr. Pat Soon-Shiong, who's a biotech billionaire, he had three major cases that stood to cost him hundreds of millions of dollars, all dismissed by the California Supreme Court, which is incidentally not in Sacramento, the state capital, but in San Francisco. The very next day, on April 2nd, Newsom and Dr. Pat hold a press conference side by side, and Dr. Pat says, I've agreed at Newsom's request to reopen all of the hospitals that I closed in order to treat California COVID patients. Now, the California Supreme Court is literally a walk across the street from the governor's office in San Francisco. And it's like, I have no doubt in my mind at all that Governor Newsom did a quid pro quo. I will ask the Supreme Court to get rid of all of your pending litigation if you reopen these hospitals. Dr. Pat agreed. By the way, aside from being corrupt, Newsom is apparently also a rube, because Dr. Pat is a grifter, and Dr. Pat reneged on the deal and let all the hospitals close and kept all the hospitals closed and never treated a single California COVID patient during the crisis anyway. So
Yep.
that's my beef against Newsom. We're out of time. Anything else we should? Any comments we need to hit before we go?
Yeah, we've got a few of them. Let me run them through here real quick. So from Red 9091, Sean Pat 6882 with the twofer. What do you think about a Defense War Department only funded by war bonds or during World War II? I mean, the public would have to really be behind a war before intervention could happen. I support it. That needs to happen.
I can't see a problem with that.
Red 9091. MMT is modern monetary theory. You guys should bring on Steve Gumbean from Macro and Cheese Podcast. He is a leftist and is informed by MMT. And then Stormborn for the $5. Both Red and Storm both gave us $5. I just wanted to give some support. Please give us an update on the financial status of the show and what we need to do to keep it going. So thank y'all very much.
We'll bring you an update on the financial status of the show. Suffice it to say, we're far from recovering from the departure of John Kiriakou, but we're doing the best we can. We can provide more details tomorrow. Okay, we're out of time. Thanks everyone. Please stay tuned for the TMI show with myself and Manila Chan, and producer Robbie West will be there as well. That's coming up right now. Yep. Robbie, thanks for sitting in for Jamarl. Jamarl will be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, Wednesday, June 17th. Take care, everyone. See you later.